be LGBTQ is to be part of a minority group. But to be LGBTQ and Christian is to be a minority of a minority. It can be a lonely journey, but you're not alone. There are authors out there who have been through the same journey as you have. So here are 5 books by LGBTQ Christian authors that you might want to pick up that will hopefully strike a chord within you. Firstly, for L, we have Eve Tashnet's Gay and Catholic. With the subtitle Accepting My Sexuality, Finding Community and Living My Faith, you know you're in for quite a ride. This book is funny, educational, and humble. Eve tells us about her experience growing up atheist and coming out at a young age to accepting parents, and then later joining the Catholic Church in college. A significant part of her book is dedicated to when she had a drinking problem, and I applaud her for being so honest about it. We then learn about her experience living as a gay and celibate Catholic, and she also explains how her drinking problem intersects with that. The focus of her book, though, is not how I can avoid sexual sin, but instead how I can give and receive love. She then offers several paths forward for the celibate Catholic.
You can answer, which is how would my life change if I were to personally take friendship seriously as a form of love and a possible life path, a way that I could be fruitful and love and serve others, or that my friends could be fruitful and love and serve others? What would I do differently?
If you are an affirming Christian looking for resources though, this might not be for you. You might want to read this instead. Matthew Vine's God and the Gay Christian, the biblical case in support of same-sex relationships. Quoting ancient Christian leaders from Augustine to Tertullian, and modern-day thought leaders like N.T. Wright to Karl Barth, you know that the author has done some heavy lifting in his research. And that clearly shows in the notes section right at the end. But the bibliography is not 1 page, 2 pages, or even 3 pages. But it's instead a whopping 33 pages long. Talk about being comprehensive and extensive. This book basically presents a revisionist argument of same-sex relationships in Christianity. Matthew examines the 6 clobber passages in the Bible, the ones in Genesis, Leviticus, Romans, 1 Corinthians, and 1 Timothy, and presents a case of how they have not been read in their proper contexts. His arguments are articulate and persuasive.
The Bible never addresses the issues of sexual orientation or same-sex marriage. So there's no reason why faithful Christians can't support their gay brothers and sisters. It's time.
Every Christian should read this in order to get an idea of what progressive Christianity feels about same-sex relationships. You might or might not agree, but at least you have a better understanding of why affirming Christians believe the way they do. The next book we are about to cover is Wesley Hill's Wash and Waiting, Reflections on Christian Faithfulness and Homosexuality. His title is inspired from 2 Bible verses, first from 1 Corinthians 6, 9-11, and the second from Romans 8, 23-25. Wesley recounts how growing up in a Christian home, he embraced Jesus at a young age and got baptized at 11. However, when puberty hit, he realized he was somehow different from his peers. Attempting to hide and bury his desires, he only came out for the first time in college. Wesley also talks about how he identifies with Henry Nouwen, and the soul-crushing loneliness and isolation they share as celibate gay Christians. Reading it was heart-rending. This book is part memoir, part theological reflection, which you would probably expect from a professor of theology. However, it's surprisingly accessible and written for the layman to read. I definitely recommend this book as a counterweight to the previous one by Matthew Vines. This way, you can view perspectives from both sides of the divide.
And I think we all know from personal experience that an issue can remain distant for you until it's your family member who comes out, or it's your friend who sits down over coffee and tells you that they're gay or lesbian. And what my book tries to do is to do that in print and to say, here's something, this is my life, here's what it feels like, here's what it looks like, here's what the struggle is like from the inside. And I hope that pastors will take it in that spirit, that they'll read this as coming from a fellow Christian, someone who could be in their congregation, who may be feeling something very similar. And I hope that they'll take it and read it in that light and use it as a way to engage with the real people who are dealing with this in their congregations.
As a bisexual trans man, Austin Harkey has written Transforming, the Bible and the Lives of Transgender Christians. The first part of the book surveys the climate in which trans folks find themselves in today. And it also helpfully defines certain terms that cisgendered people not in the know might not be aware of. He also discusses if being trans is a sin, sickness, or speciality. In part 2, he explores how faith and the reality of being trans intersect and influence each other. Interspersed within the book are interviews with trans Christians and non-binary folk, as they share about their experiences in church, both the good and the bad. Austin, who is a graduate from Luther Seminary, also breaks down various passages from scripture for us, and explains how they relate to him as a trans person of faith. I really like chapter 7 where he expounded on Isaiah 56, and how it impacted him as a student of biblical texts. I'm also happy to report that this book is easy to read, and suitable for both the young and the old, new or mature Christian, and trans folks on any stage of their journey.
My favorite thing is to look at passages in the Bible with characters that sort of are drawing outside gender lines. And there are a lot of those characters in the Bible. I have made a lot of, especially the early trans and Christian videos, lots of them focused on those characters in the Bible, and I was just thinking about how important those characters are, to be able to see yourself in Scripture, not necessarily in a one-to-one way, like we can't look back at the Bible and say, aha, that person was trans, or that person was gay, or that person was asexual, or whatever, because those are modern identities and modern words that we now use, but we don't want to sort of anachronistically put that on people from thousands and thousands of years ago. However, having said that, there are people in the Bible who have experiences that look a lot like our experiences as gender diverse people living today. And so when we can look back at those experiences and say, I think I see something there. There's something like a little bit queer, we might say, about what that person is doing or how they're acting. That can be really powerful to see people in Scripture that seem to look a bit like you.
Finally, the last book I'm going to recommend today is Megan DeFrance's Sex Difference in Christian Theology: Male, Female, and Intersex in the Image of God. This book began as a dissertation in the Department of Theology at Marquette University. So, be prepared that certain sections can be rather heavy. This includes part 1, where we are given a definition of what intersex is, and a super detailed history of intersex folks in Jesus' time, the classical period, modern period, and in the postmodern era. The book gets a little more interesting in part 2, where theological anthropology of intersex folks is explored at great length. I found this part of the book eye-opening and thoroughly fascinating. Megan discusses the theology of intersex bodies in chapter 4, and later on in chapter 6 also explores the Christological and eschatological tensions of this topic. Doesn't that sound interesting? However, at 289 pages of scholarly material, this book is not for the faint-hearted. For those who do finish this book cover to cover though, you are in for such a treat.
Genesis, the narrative in Genesis about Adam and Eve gives us God's ideal. Mm-hmm. So this God makes the world, makes male and female, and it's good. Mm-hmm. So anything that doesn't appear in Genesis 1 is somehow a result of the fall, it's not good, as if Genesis gave us all of God's blueprint for humanity and all of creation. Mm-hmm. And so intersex persons have been typically, their bodies have been examples of the fall by the few conservative theologians who engage with intersex. But when we look at the Genesis narrative, we find lots of things that aren't present. Mm-hmm. So we have these broad categories of creatures of the land and creatures of the sea and creatures of the sky. There's no mention of amphibians, creatures that bridge two different categories. Yes. And yet I've never heard a scientist who is Christian say amphibians, they're a result of the fall because they mix the they're not in God's good creation. And so we need to say, okay, is Genesis giving us Adam and Eve as the ideal for all times and places? Or do we need to think about those, are we bringing those assumptions to the text?
So there it is, 5 books you should read if you're LGBTQ and Christian. Do you know of any other good books by LGBTQ Christian authors? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, links to buy the books will be in the description. Do subscribe to my channel for more interesting titles. Have an awesome time. Until next time, bye!